Have you ever felt the warmth of connection slowly fade, replaced by an unsettling quiet? A silence that whispers doubts and ignites a desperate urge to understand, to fix, to somehow rewind time to when things felt different? This is a crossroads many find themselves at, a moment where the natural human instinct to reach out clashes with a deeper need for self-respect and understanding. Imagine a vibrant thread of connection, once taut and bright, beginning to slacken. The familiar rhythm of quick responses and eager smiles gives way to delayed replies, brief acknowledgments, or perhaps nothing at all. A sense of unease settles in, a knot forming in the pit of your stomach. What has changed? What went wrong? The mind races, replaying past interactions, searching for clues in the echoes of forgotten conversations. In this fragile space, the most common reaction is often a surge of panic. A fear of loss, a questioning of one's own worth, can drive a desperate need to bridge that growing distance. Yet it is in this very panic, in this frantic attempt to pull the connection back, that the delicate balance of attraction can be irrevocably disrupted. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about recognizing and preserving your inherent value as an individual. When faced with silence, the temptation to chase, to explain, to plead for attention can be overwhelming. Each unanswered message, each ignored attempt at connection, can feel like a personal rejection, fueling a cycle of increasingly desperate efforts. But in this pursuit, something precious is often lost: personal power. Consider the subtle yet powerful dynamic at play. Sometimes the withdrawal of attention isn't a deliberate act of malice, but rather an unconscious testing of the waters. A subconscious gauge of your emotional resilience, your self-assurance. In a world where connection can be fleeting, the ability to remain grounded amidst uncertainty can be a compelling quality. If the immediate response to distance is to pursue with greater intensity, an unintended message is sent, a vulnerability that can inadvertently diminish attraction. This isn't about adopting a cold or detached persona. It's about cultivating an inner sense of equilibrium, a quiet confidence that isn't dependent on external validation. It's about being a person who knows their own worth and doesn't falter simply because someone else's feelings seem uncertain. Let's explore some of the common pitfalls, the instinctive reactions that can inadvertently widen the very gap we hope to close. Understanding what not to do is often the first crucial step towards navigating these delicate situations with grace and strength. One of the most prevalent responses to being ignored is to relentlessly pursue contact. The urge to send just checking in messages, to initiate conversation after unanswered attempts, can be powerful. It feels like reaching out, like showing you care. But consider the underlying message this persistent outreach conveys. If your messages are met with silence, the continued initiation signals that you are acutely aware of and affected by their lack of response. It subtly places the other person in a position of control, where their silence dictates your actions. The uncomfortable truth is that if someone is intentionally creating distance, they are likely already aware of your desire for connection. The more frequently you reach out, the more predictable and, paradoxically, the less intriguing you may become. This isn't about playing hard to get, it's about understanding the dynamics of attraction. People are often drawn to those who possess a sense of self-sufficiency, who aren't solely reliant on external validation for their sense of well-being. When you consistently initiate contact after being met with silence, you inadvertently communicate that their attention is more valuable than your own peace of mind. This perceived imbalance can subtly shift the dynamic, leading to a decrease in attraction. Instead of succumbing to the urge to constantly text, consider a different approach, mirroring their energy. If they are distant, allow yourself to be distant as well. If they are silent, let your communication also become silent. This silence shouldn't be fueled by anger or resentment, but by a quiet sense of self-respect. This is often the point where anxiety creeps in. silence can feel like failure, like confirmation of a negative outcome. But in reality, silence can be a powerful filter. It reveals who is genuinely invested and who was merely enjoying the attention. Imagine sending a casual "good morning" text only to see it remain unread. The next day, a hesitant "hey, are you okay?" also goes unanswered. By the third day, a lengthy message pours out your feelings, expressing how much you miss talking. At this point, the silence is no longer accidental. It has become a deliberate response to your continued efforts. You have inadvertently trained them to expect your attention, regardless of their own level of engagement. Now consider the alternative. The unanswered text is met with your own quiet withdrawal. You redirect your focus to your own life, your own goals. This silence becomes potent because it demonstrates emotional discipline. It shows that you are not someone who will beg for attention, but rather someone who values their own time and energy. This shift in energy can be transformative. The question then arises in their mind: why the sudden change? What is occupying their attention? The fundamental principle here is simple. If someone is creating distance, do not be the one relentlessly closing it. Allow them to wonder about your silence. Let them experience the absence of your constant outreach. If they genuinely care, they will likely notice and perhaps even initiate contact. If they don't, then you gain valuable clarity about their level of investment. In either scenario, you preserve your self-respect and emotional equilibrium. Another common reaction when faced with silence is to immediately question oneself and seek to understand what went wrong. The internal dialogue can become a relentless loop of self-doubt and analysis. This often manifests externally as the question, "Hey, is something wrong?" On the surface, this seems like a caring and empathetic inquiry. However, consider the underlying implications. If something is genuinely amiss and the other person wishes to discuss it, they likely would. The fact that they are creating distance suggests that they have already made a choice, at least for the moment, to withdraw. By asking "what's wrong?" you are essentially seeking their permission to understand their feelings. This can inadvertently place you in a position of perceived weakness. It signals that you are feeling off balance, unsure, and second-guessing yourself due to their silence. Women, often attuned to emotional cues, can pick up on this shift in your demeanor. The moment they sense you trying to regain their favor without even understanding the issue, the dynamic subtly changes. You become the one seeking approval, which can diminish attraction. It's crucial to recognize the multifaceted nature of silence in relationships. Sometimes people withdraw not because they want to articulate a specific problem, but to assess the solidity of the connection. Are you the type of person who becomes unmoored by emotional distance, or are you someone who remains grounded and focused regardless of external fluctuations? When you resist the urge to immediately ask what's wrong and instead respect their silence, you alter the dynamic. You remove the pressure to provide an explanation. You avoid appearing as though you are trying to fix something that hasn't been clearly defined. Most importantly, you maintain your self-respect by not chasing after answers that may not be readily forthcoming. If something truly significant is affecting them, they will likely communicate it in their own time. But if the silence is a means of gauging your reaction, your immediate inquiry simply confirms that their distance has had the intended effect. It reinforces the idea that you are more concerned with their emotional state than with maintaining your own sense of calm and self-assurance. This imbalance rarely fosters deeper connection. Consider this shift in perspective. You do not need to chase explanations to feel secure. You do not require immediate clarity to maintain your inner peace. When you stop asking what's wrong, you begin to accept that their behavior in itself provides information. It offers a glimpse into their current emotional state and their approach to communication. Instead of dwelling on the silence, redirect your energy towards your own life. Stay engaged in your interests, your goals, and your well-being. If the connection is meaningful and based on mutual respect, they will likely re-engage when they are ready. If not, your decision to remain calm and self-directed demonstrates a strength that speaks volumes, far more than any anxious inquiry ever could. Another common misstep in the face of silence is the urge to apologize simply to restore harmony. There is a significant distinction between genuinely acknowledging a mistake and offering a blanket apology out of insecurity, solely to regain someone's favor. Unfortunately, this line can become blurred when anxiety sets in due to a lack of communication. The silence can trigger a cascade of self-doubt, leading you to scrutinize every word and action. Before you know it, you might find yourself crafting an apology, not because you genuinely believe you were at fault, but because you crave a response, a sign that the connection hasn't been completely severed. This type of apology, born out of insecurity, rarely earns respect. Instead, it can inadvertently confirm that the other person holds emotional leverage over you. It teaches them that withdrawal will be met with appeasement, that they can elicit an apology even without articulating a specific grievance. This doesn't foster closeness. It often leads to a rapid decline in interest. As an individual, your sense of value is closely tied to your stability and self-respect. If every instance of distance prompts an immediate apology, you are training the other person to perceive you as the problem, even if their withdrawal is unrelated to your actions. Over time, this can erode attraction and lead to a sense of being taken for granted. You might believe that a preemptive, "I'm sorry if I upset you," will diffuse the situation and pave the way for a return to normalcy. However, an apology without clarity or genuine remorse can come across as disingenuous and desperate. It suggests a willingness to say anything to end the silence, sacrificing your own sense of dignity in the process. It's crucial to prioritize your own sense of self-worth. If you have genuinely made a mistake, own it with confidence and take responsibility without groveling. But if the silence is unprompted and unexplained, there is no inherent need to apologize. Do not fall into the trap of trying to buy back attention through guilt. You do not owe anyone your peace of mind at the expense of your own power. Allow them to process their feelings and their distance. If they are truly invested, they will likely return with open communication, not continued ambiguity. When that happens, you will be in a position of strength, having maintained your composure and self-respect, rather than appearing as someone who will apologize for unknown offenses. Your respect for yourself sets the standard for how others treat you. Never relinquish that for fleeting validation. Another reactive tendency when feeling ignored is to attempt to elicit a response through manufactured jealousy. This might involve posting pictures with others, hinting at a busy social life, or leaving vague online updates designed to pique curiosity. While this might feel like a clever tactic in the moment, it often stems from a place of insecurity and can inadvertently highlight the very power dynamic you are trying to shift. The underlying motivation is a desire to be noticed, but the method reveals a reliance on external validation. By trying to provoke jealousy, you are essentially saying, "I need to manipulate your emotions to regain your attention because I don't feel secure enough to handle your silence directly." This can come across as emotionally reactive rather than confidently self-assured. The truth, though often difficult to accept, is that if someone is truly creating distance, attempts to make them jealous often push them further away. Even if they do react, the response is likely to be fueled by irritation, confusion, or perhaps even amusement at the perceived manipulation, rather than genuine renewed interest. You cannot win someone back by making them feel excluded. Instead, you risk appearing as though you are still desperately seeking their attention, albeit indirectly. Engaging in such tactics often leaves you feeling emptier afterward, because deep down, you recognize the inauthenticity of the motive. Your focus wasn't on your own life or growth, but solely on trying to elicit a reaction from them. This mindset erodes self-respect. Trying to induce jealousy also signals that their absence has indeed unsettled you. You are not calm, not centered, but rather performing for an audience of one. The more you try to create this facade, the more transparent your underlying anxiety may become, inadvertently reinforcing their sense of control. The truly powerful response is often to do nothing driven by spite, but rather by self-respect. You do not need to prove your worth to someone who is currently ignoring you. You do not need to manufacture attention. If your genuine presence wasn't appreciated, then feigned scenarios are unlikely to yield a meaningful connection. Allow your silence to speak. Redirect your focus back to your own life, your own passions, your own growth. The moment you cease striving to be seen is often the moment you begin to be respected again, not just by the other person, but more importantly, by yourself. Trying to make someone jealous is simply another form of chasing, and any form of chasing can inadvertently lower your perceived value. Remain still, remain grounded, and allow them to wonder, not as part of a manipulative game, but because you are too secure in yourself to engage in such tactics. In the digital age, social media plays a subtle but significant role in interpersonal dynamics. When someone is ignoring your direct communications, but you continue to actively engage with their online presence, you are sending a clear message: I am still here and I am still paying attention. While seemingly innocuous, consistently viewing their stories, liking their posts, or leaving comments can be interpreted as a form of quiet pursuit. It's not direct engagement, but it's a visible reminder of your continued interest. They see it, and instead of wondering about your whereabouts or your state of mind, they know you are still following their activities. People are often keenly aware of how their online presence attracts and maintains attention. If someone is ignoring your texts but still actively posting, they are likely aware that you are watching. They may even be subconsciously observing your reactions. Each like, each view, each comment can inadvertently feed this dynamic, confirming that you remain invested even in the absence of direct communication. It proves that their silence hasn't deterred your attention, thereby maintaining their perceived control of the situation. Consider the implications. When you continue to engage with their social media while being ignored, you are not being subtle, you are being predictable. They don't necessarily need to respond directly because you are still showing up in their digital sphere. This doesn't spark curiosity or build attraction. It reinforces the existing power dynamic. Consider the example of someone who diligently checked their ex-partner's stories every day after they stopped talking. They didn't reach out directly, but believed their continued presence on social media might keep them in the ex's thoughts. However, the outcome was the opposite. The ex-partner eventually unfollowed them. The reason? The continued digital presence, without any direct communication, came across as needy and somewhat passive-aggressive. The most effective approach is often to withdraw your energy completely, and this includes social media. If someone is ignoring you, give them the space of total absence. Stop viewing their content. Stop engaging with their page. Allow them to genuinely experience what it feels like to not have your attention at all, not just in private messages, but across all platforms. The truth is that people rarely miss those who remain constantly visible. They often miss those who disappear, not as a form of punishment, but as a natural consequence of redirecting their focus and energy elsewhere. Show them what it looks like when you are no longer actively checking for their updates, and you will instantly shift the dynamic. They will either respect the space and potentially re-engage, or they will reveal that their initial disengagement reflected a lack of genuine investment. When faced with a relationship that seems to be faltering due to a lack of communication, the temptation to confide in mutual friends can be strong. You might feel the need to vent your frustrations, to seek validation, or to understand the situation from an outside perspective. However, sharing your feelings about the situation with mutual acquaintances can often be detrimental to your own well-being and the potential for reconciliation. Firstly, consider the nature of venting. While it can provide temporary emotional release, it also involves creating a narrative, framing the situation from your point of view. This inevitably introduces a bias into the perception of the mutual friend. They now have a filtered version of events, colored by your emotions and interpretations. More importantly, it is only a matter of time before this information, however well-intentioned the confidant, reaches the other person. Even if the mutual friend doesn't explicitly take sides or intend to share the details, your emotions have already influenced their understanding of the situation. When they inevitably interact with the person who is ignoring you, their perspective will have been subtly altered. This can lead to a messy web of indirect communication and potential misunderstandings. The person you are frustrated with might feel as though their privacy has been invaded, or that they are being discussed behind their back. They might feel pressured to respond or defend themselves in a way they weren't initially prepared to do. This can lead to defensiveness and further entrench the distance between you. Furthermore, confiding excessively in mutual friends can inadvertently portray you in a less favorable light. While your feelings are valid, constantly expressing your distress to others can suggest a lack of emotional self-regulation. Regardless of how justified your frustrations may be, oversharing can create the impression that you are unable to manage your own emotions independently. People are often drawn to individuals who exhibit emotional stability and resilience, who don't allow external circumstances to completely dictate their mood. Instead of immediately turning to mutual friends, take the time to process your feelings internally. Allow yourself the space for reflection, which can often lead to a more grounded and composed perspective. This not only aids in your own healing, but also prevents you from potentially creating a situation where the other person feels cornered or judged. It's also important to remember that mutual friends, however well-meaning, are not your therapists or mediators. Their primary role isn't to solve your relationship issues. Additionally, their loyalties might subtly lean towards the other person, or they might unintentionally amplify certain aspects of the situation that don't necessarily reflect the full picture. When facing silence, the most constructive approach is to focus on your own emotional well-being and allow the other person the space they seem to be seeking. You will feel more empowered and grounded, and if the time comes for direct communication, you will be in a much stronger and more centered position. Perhaps the most critical principle to understand when facing silence is to never, under any circumstances, chase after it. When someone withdraws, becomes unresponsive, or gives you the silent treatment, the natural inclination to bridge that gap can be overwhelming. However, resisting this urge is paramount. Chasing silence in the hope that it will suddenly transform into a meaningful conversation or a heartfelt confession is often a futile endeavor. If you find yourself pursuing silence, it indicates a fundamental misunderstanding of its nature and purpose. Silence isn't merely the absence of words, it represents space. It's an opportunity for the other person to think, to process their emotions, to determine their own feelings and desires. Silence isn't something to be feared or broken at all costs. It is often something to be respected. The common mistake is to interpret silence as immediate rejection. This triggers a panic response, leading to a flurry of attempts to break through the quiet. More texts, more calls, even pleas or apologies offered without understanding the root cause of the withdrawal. The reality is that the more you chase silence, the more elusive it often becomes. You are not winning back connection by pursuing it relentlessly. Instead, you are often demonstrating a level of desperation that can be unattractive. When you fail to respect someone's need for space, it suggests a lack of emotional control, allowing their absence to dictate your actions and thoughts. Consider this honestly. If you struggle to handle a period of silence, how will you navigate the inevitable challenges and periods of distance that occur in any meaningful relationship? Silence, in this context, can be an opportunity for you to reclaim your own power, to redirect your focus inward. Instead of obsessing over the lack of response, turn your attention to your own life, your own goals, your own personal growth. The more you fixate on the silence, the more you inadvertently push the other person away. It might seem counterintuitive, but forcing communication on someone who isn't ready is rarely effective. Pressure often leads to further withdrawal, not openness. It's time to release the notion that your emotional state should be entirely dependent on whether or not someone else chooses to communicate. Silence is not an insurmountable obstacle. It's often a boundary that needs to be acknowledged. Step back from it. Allow it to exist. When someone goes quiet, allow yourself to do the same. Use that time to reinvest in your own well-being, your own journey. Do not chase the silence. Embrace the opportunity for self-reflection and growth. If they choose to re-engage after their period of silence, they will do so because they genuinely desire connection, not because they felt pressured or obligated. Respect their need for space, respect your own need for peace, and continue moving forward on your own path. This is the foundation of building a truly resilient and attractive sense of self. Consider this final thought. If you find yourself unable to cope with a period of silence from someone, it might indicate a need to cultivate greater emotional independence. A healthy relationship is not built on constant, unwavering attention, but rather on a foundation of mutual respect, individual growth, and the ability to navigate periods of both connection and space. Learning to be comfortable with silence, both your own and others, is a crucial step towards building stronger, more sustainable connections. Have you ever experienced this unsettling silence in a connection? Did you find yourself making some of these common mistakes, or were you able to navigate the situation with a sense of inner strength? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your insights can offer valuable perspectives to others facing similar challenges. This is an opportunity to learn from each other and build a supportive community focused on fostering healthy and balanced connections. Remember, understanding these dynamics is not about manipulation, but about cultivating self-awareness and navigating relationships with greater wisdom and self-respect. The silence itself can be a powerful teacher, guiding us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and the complexities of human connection.